people too? Yeah, please. Dear speakers, if you were so kind to unmute yourselves.
Okay.
We are very glad to have you. Sorry that we are a bit over time, but the sun is shining outside and we are in this beautiful building from 1954. It's lovely inside with a lot of wood, but the windows only show a bit of sun. So people went out to have a coffee. They are now streaming back into the room. And we'll start. Yes, take your seat, please. And Georg, you too. You're part of the game. Yes. So this is not the official Anmoderation. I'm going to facilitate properly in a minute. Please give us 1 minute or more time until all the people are back in the room, because we have a fully packed room. And we are sure that we have to stop at 12:30 because one of our speakers has to catch a mobility tool in time to leave Brussels. So we will be in punct at 12:30 or 12:31. We will close the session. Yeah. So 1 more minute and then we start. So dear audience, thank you for being reconnected digitally. It has been quite a fruitful morning so far. I think we had a lot of very inspiring keynotes and little chats. So this session now is heavily discussing the EU policy actions in the area of climate change. And before I introduce our fellow speakers to you, not only on site, but definitely connected online, I want to have one Slido question for all of you, because we really want to know beforehand. And please use the Slido tool, use the code 234 and reconnect digitally. One quick question. Are you familiar, we want to know, with the EU policies and initiatives impacting on building sustainability and resilience? Please be very honest, because either they will have a tough job, our direct generals, to really infuse you because you know so much already, or if you know very little, it's also very good to have them and to deep dive into our subjects. So let's give us 30 seconds. Okay, 1 is very little, 5 is very high. So at least we have a quarter of the people. There are more and more coming in. Okay, but that's almost half of not knowing too much and being very familiar. But that's a good starting point. So I'm now, thank you very much for connecting via Slido. I'm now very happy to connect with 3 different directorate generals. We have Brigitte JACQUEMONT from DG Energy. We have Philippe Mosley from DG Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SME. He's a former architect. And we have GRADY from DG Education and Culture. And here we are connected with, I already introduced him, ACE President Georg PENDL, and we have MEP Marcos Ross SEMPERE. He is a member of the group of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament. And if I read it correctly, you have a PhD in architecture, which is not the worst proposition to start that panel with. And we have Alexandru MATEI. He's connected digitally with us. He's a passionate urban rethinker, senior officer at ICLEI, which is a famous network of local governments totally committed to sustainability. So we have a fantastic lineup, and it goes as follows. We have 1 presentation of each Directorate General, and after each presentation, we have you 3 reconnecting, recommenting, co-creating, asking questions, and we have the questions via the chat. Please use the chat heavily. So we have like kind of a portion, different cakes, and that will add to the whole topic. So I think we can start. I can see already Brigitte JACQUEMONT, Policy Officer at DG Energy at the EU Commission, Unit Buildings and Products. We are very curious on your presentation now. Formidable, we can hear you. Yeah, super.
And, can I share my screen, my presentation? Yeah.
Who show? Yeah, we are on the way. The team is working on it.
Oh, it's not me. Okay, just to know.
No, it's you. No, it's you. You should start it yourself if possible. That would be
Yeah,
very
no
kind.
problem. So you can see the presentation.
Formidable. Yeah, it works.
Try to. Okay. So thank you very much for the invitation. So my name is Brigitte JACQUEMONT. I work in DG ENER, in the unit in charge of energy efficiency of building and product. I'm going to present briefly European Green Deal, Fit for 55 package, Renovation Wave, and revision of the EPPD. And my unit is working on this topic more specifically. So, as you know, one of our priority at the European Commission is to go further and faster to tackle the climate crisis. And unfortunately, climate change is already visible today. This summer, we saw floods in Belgium, Germany, there was fire in Greece, France. And really, the European Green Deal is our blueprint to tackle this climate crisis. On this slide, you can have an overview of the various policies and instruments within the Green Deal. And there's really two important dates to have in mind, especially with the view of the COP26 in a couple of days. So first of all, the EU aims to be climate neutral by 2050, very important goal. And the most important midterm goal is to cut greenhouse gas emission by more than half by 2030. So it's mean in less than 10 years. And for this, the European Green Deal includes a series of initiatives, and some of them have a direct impact on energy efficiency and renewable energy policies. If regarding the midterm goal of 2030, so we aim to have a net reduction of at least 55% of greenhouse gas emission. And in the energy sector, our strategy is based on 3 pillars. So first of all, it's to give priority to energy efficiency and energy saving, electrification where we can, of course, boosting renewables, and the last is innovation when it's not possible to electrify by using, for example, low carbon fuel or hydrogen. In 2020, so the Commission has published an important number of strategies to reach these objectives. It's integration of the energy system, production and deployment of hydrogen, increasing the share of renewable and offshore renewable energy. And you have the renovation waves, which is the focus of today. And the goal is to make buildings more energy efficient. Regarding the work program of the Commission, I will just quote that we are also updating EU laws. So on July, the EU Commission has adopted 12 legislative proposals, including Renewable Energy Directive, Energy Efficiency Directive, extension of the emission trading system. And for later of this year, we will have different regulatory framework, and especially the revision of the energy performance of building directive. So really, with all these measures, we seek to have a coherence and alignment across policy. So regarding the building sector, so as you know, it's one of the largest energy consumer in Europe. And really a significant effort is needed in this sector. So it's really why buildings are very high in the EU political agenda today. If we have a look to new buildings, so we have a well-established legislative framework, and the new buildings are much more efficient today. However, for existing building, we can say that almost 75% of the stock is inefficient, and the renovation rates are only about 1%. So it's really why the European Commission has launched the Renovation Wave initiative. So the goal is to double the renovation rates in the next 10 years and to make sure that renovation leads to a higher energy and resource efficiency. So, this renovation has, of course, a wider benefit, and they can improve the quality of life of a citizen, and they will also foster the economic recovery. I wanted just to analyze some principles of the renovation wave. Of course, first you have the energy efficiency first guiding principle. One very important principle is also to protect the right to everyone to have affordable housing, so nobody should be left behind. You have decarbonization.
Brigitte,
Yeah.
pardon. I feel very unpolite to interrupt you, but we checked that the black barriers are not on our side. They are part of your presentation. We double checked that. Can we switch and we do the slides and you just talk? We don't see you then anymore, but then we have a proper presentation. Would that be okay for you that we start the slides from here?
Yeah.
Okay, so we try to switch. No, you don't have to do anything. We have the same presentation here, I think. We restart from here, from scratch, from that very moment of slide, and you just talk over it because you will see the slides. Is that correct, Julie? Yeah, let's do it that way. We don't see your face anymore, but we have, oh, fantastic. We have the whole presentation. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so regarding the renovation wave, so I wanted to highlight the various principles. So the first one is energy efficiency principle. I was talking about to protect the right of everyone to have affordable housing. So it's very important to have no one left behind. The other principle of course, decarbonization and integration, renewable. You have life cycle thinking and circularity. Next slide, please. Principle of high health and environmental standard. You have the challenges of green and digital transition. And the last but not least, but you know, the respect for aesthetic and architectural quality. The renovation wave has an action plan, and in this action plan you have 23 measures and they are being implemented. And as you know, the new European Bauhaus is one of the action of the renovation wave. But the renovation wave also announced the revision of the EPPD with some measures that are on the slide. And if we go to the next slide, please. Next slide, yes, perfect. This will give you an overview of the measure that we are considering in the revision of the EPPD. But really, I have to insist that it's work in progress. So the first instrument that we are envisaging is to improve the worst performing stock is a phased introduction of mandatory minimum energy performance standards. So this instrument can be very effective to increase the rate and depth of a renovation. And there are already examples in member states, for instance, in the Netherlands, in France, and also in Belgium, in Flanders. It will be something new for the EPPD, and there are several possible options of designing. Another measure we are considering is the possibility to have a definition for deep renovation. The objective is really to set a clear definition for deep renovation, but also to link it with financial mechanism. But perhaps to also allow to have single or multi-step renovation. An important area of work for us is improving information to the citizen. So with, for example, one measure, which is the introduction of a building passport. There are also examples of building renovation passport in member states. We hope also to enhance the information to the citizen with a strengthening of the energy performance certificates. In particular, we see really the need to look into the possibility to improve the quality and comparability of the energy performance certificates. Regarding decarbonization of building, one key area will be to provide information also regarding carbon emission of building. One point is modernizing building with a possible review of the current framework, a smart readiness indicator. And lastly, which is very important for building in a broader context, is to strengthen the e-mobility rule to encourage sustainable mobility. So these are the elements we are working on. It's really work in progress. And the revision is based on an intensive feedback we have with stakeholders, and it's reinforcing by the end of the year as part of the effort to put forward to be fit for 55. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this presentation. And then when you were just talking, there was just the word, that was key. What was key for you? You get your microphone. We have a microphone for each of you. I get the third one. And yeah, please start.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's a key factor that now we have a crisis with the prices of the houses increasing progressively, and we need that the Commission concrete measures, and especially where the funds are, because we don't know a specific budget to this renovation wave. They are talking about 35 million buildings. They are talking about duplicating the rate of renovating, but we still don't know, 1 year after the communication, we still don't know where is the money. Will be the money from the recovery plans? Will be the money from the regional funds? Will be the money from the cohesion funds? We still don't know. We need some concrete measures on it. And of course, we are not going, we from the Parliament, and we are pushing the Commission to define this aspect. And one last aspect, we are listening recently that the European Commission is considering to incorporate housing into the ETS market. And this is a thing that we are not going to permit at all, because it means that people is going to pay for this, for living in their houses more in the ETS market. And in this context of a crisis of housing with prices increasing, we are going to tell the people, oh no, you have to pay your refurbishing of the house, and if you don't, you have to pay for emitting carbon or gases, greenhouse gases. Oh no, this is not the way.
Okay, Brigitte, do you want to react directly, or shall we go on and sum up some more thoughts?
Yeah, happy to react if it's fine with you.
Okay, good. So we go on. Maybe we first connect with Alexandru, if you are there out there. Your thoughts on the presentation or your comments?
Yeah, maybe a quick remark, and greetings for everybody. I would love to be there with you. Taking into account both what our colleague was saying before and in the presentation, I will be curious, what are, from the Commission perspective, the challenges that they foresee in implementing this? So if you do such a process, you expect that, okay, those are the sensitive elements that we should consider. And then connecting with that, I will also pinpoint that the success of this process, in my view, will depend on how much we need to get the general public support. So not just a discussion at in a higher level and profession, but also the general public, as mentioned by our colleague before. I will continue later, but I want to give space also for the others.
Okay, thank you very much. And you, Georg.
Yeah. Housing is affordable housing is a human right. I mean, this is not a market question. This is, of course, this I am working in the field of social housing, of affordable social housing in where I'm living and working. It's getting more and more difficult to keep a certain level of quality. And even we built since 15 years passive house standard all the time. Questionable materials, partly a lot of concrete, but otherwise it doesn't work anymore. But I mean, the basic question I think is you cannot leave, and it shows it more and more in Europe, that housing gets less and less affordable for many and more people. And this means, and a core message of Ursula von der Leyen's New European Bauhaus is nobody can be left behind. So this is the duty.
Okay, so I think after the first round, we have 3 questions on the table. First question is, who pays the renovation wave? Second question is, what are the challenges you foresee? And the third question is, maybe it doesn't fit all in one answer, how to secure that housing stays affordable, also with the means of renovation and becoming sustainable and carbon neutral.
Yes, thank you.
What are the Commission's thoughts on that? On these 3 questions?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very important point that have been raised. So regarding the financial framework, the EU budget for the coming period is will be 1.3 trillion, and 30% of this amount, so around 600 billion, will go on green investment. And if we have really a look to recovery and resilience facility, which is one of the central instruments for the recovery, we have received from member state the recovery plan and starting assessing them. And very happy to say that it's in the recovery plan, you have 50 billion euro which go to green investment, and in particular to energy renovation. So it's quite important. And of course, we are also working on the cohesion fund, and we hope to have a similar level of ambition. So we hope to be able to have this renovation wave with the adequate funding. There's a question in the chat.
The question of the challenges that you foresee. That was the point of Marcos.
There was also a question of the ETS, because I saw in the chat that the people.
Yeah, there's a big discussion going on. That's the next point. We will deep dive. There's a big pro and con going on in the chat about ETS, but that's the next question. Let us stick with the challenges. Maybe you can, do you want to, no, okay. Big challenges that you foresee, Brigitte.
But I think, as it was said by the different speakers, what is very important is to have all the people on board of this renovation wave. We really need to work with all levels, European, local level, to have policymakers, citizen, industry, financial institution. And also, it's very important, if we want to have this on the ground, that the citizen really see the benefit of the renovation wave. So I think it's very central. They have to see that it's lower the bill, you have no job, and also increase the quality. So it's very important to have on board the citizen for me.
Okay, and the third question was the affordable housing question. Somebody in the chat just writes, affordable housing can be helped by working with local stakeholders collaboratively. We just heard that morning also from many examples, not only from India and Bangladesh by Anna Heringer. But what are your thoughts on affordable housing in the future to really secure that, with or without ETS?
I think really that affordable housing, it's really the precondition for the success of the renovation wave. It's one of the main elements. And for this, the European Commission has launched what we call the Energy Poverty Advisory Board, which will be a center of expertise to really see closely what's happened, and it will work with local actors. And we have also the new instrument called the Social Climate Fund proposed by the European Commission. But really, it's one of the main challenges, yeah, to have all the people on board.
Georg, I directly hand over to you.
No, I changed the topic. I mean, if 75% of the building stock in Europe is insufficient in terms of energy, I am especially thinking about the building stock of the late 19th, early 20th century, what in German language we call Gründerzeit buildings, the block buildings, and which are under a pretty strong pressure also from the investor side already, because if you demolish and build a new one, you get 20 to 25% more gross area because you make just the spaces lower. And on the other hand, they are also under danger by a in a simple way adapted energy renovation. What are your thoughts about this, please?
Did you get the point, Brigitte? What are your thoughts about these challenges? About these Gründerzeit? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very important challenges, but I think the current EU budget is one of the most important. So I think it will have a level effect on this, and to work with all the different stakeholders and the various levels, implication of member state, of region, of cities, and so on.
Okay, I see into your face, Marcos. Any other comments from your part? And we also have Alexandru reconnecting last time in this round.
Okay, I just wanted to add another topic because we are pushing also the European Commission that the new European Bauhaus initiative should be the previous reflection to the renovation wave. How is the European Commission thinking about incorporating the solutions and proposals from the new European Bauhaus into the renovation wave?
Okay, that it's not an add-on, the nice European Bauhaus initiative, rather than how to incorporate it in the renovation wave. That's the key question.
I think the European Bauhaus is really very important initiative, and it's really followed closely at a very high level at the European Commission by Ursula von der Leyen. So we are currently working on this on the implementing phase. And I'm sure that in the future that will have a strong influence on the EU policy. But it's maybe too early to say how we will do this. But it's very major topic here.
But let me stick to one of the values and the initiatives of the initiative itself. It is reuse instead of rebuild from scratch. So demolition as an exception. And there's a question in the chat. The question was, what will be the mechanisms within the EPBD to prioritize retrofit versus new build? Clear mechanisms.
So really the EPBD is only one part of a more broader framework, and till now the EPBD is really mainly focused on energy efficiency and production of carbon, and we will pave the way to have a more holistic approach. But I think really all the circularity principle, reuse, demolition principle, and so on, we are really tackling this within the renovation wave and really working. I really work hand in hand with my colleague from DG Arms and DG Grow to introduce this concept to have really an overall vision of the building and not limited to energy performance. But I think for this revision will come in a couple of months. It will be only first steps.
There are more and more questions popping up. It's very interesting. We will put them in the archive, and we will see to reconnect with you later in order to really keep that communication up. But I want to hand over the microphone for the last question to this DG, to Alexandru. Are you still there?
Yes, of course. I'm still here, and I'm following carefully. Maybe not quite a question, but to continue a bit of the focus on how important I think it is to get a general public support for such transformation. Those are radical transformation. And as Marcos was saying, if those are just put to be paid by the inhabitants, then we might have a backlash. And here I think I'm happy to see that Brigitte says that the support of people is key also for them, and to confirm that. I think we should use the current situation in Europe, and that I refer this to the a huge increase of energy prices that emerge in some of the countries, even for 40% in some of them, to use this moment to show the need and the value of retrofitting and so on. What I am afraid is that we might not, if we don't go on the ground, in the neighborhoods, in the periphery, if we don't go in villages, around cities, in small towns, we might lose this opportunity to bring people on board, and we might remain very distant from it. And here, just a short comparison with the success of vaccination in Europe with COVID. I think it's similar with, it was a clear proof, the diversity of results we have. It's also clear proof of the quality of communication and trust we managed to bring from the communities. So if it is something to underline on this topic here with a colleague, is like, I will again emphasize, we need to go down from the offices, in our offices, to go in the street, in the neighborhoods, to talk with people and make them to be our supporters, and not just remain distant and very technical.
I leave that as a comment. I apologize for not handing over the microphone back to you, Brigitte, but rather, because time is fleeting, handing it over to Philippe Mosley now, DG Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs. So we are looking forward to your presentation. We have a lot of questions in the chat now popping up, and input, etc. Time is too short, but it's not lost. Philippe.
Thanks, and it's lovely to be here and speak to you, especially as I think has been mentioned, my architectural background myself. So it's really exciting to be with you guys today. So yes, I can either share my screen or you share it. I don't mind for my slides.
So I think that it was the computer beforehand. So I think you can do it yourself. If we have problems, we switch to ours.
Okay. I can go ahead with mine. So here we are. I will just put it full screen.
Yep, it looks good.
That's fine, is it?
Yep, it's
excellent.
Fine.
So yes, so I work in.
Oh no, great. Sorry. Same thing again. We don't know why. We started from here.
You started from there. Okay.
We start from here.
There must be something, I've got a good connection at my end, so it must be something funny.
It's because of the chat of your screen. If you take the chat off. Now, let's do it from here. Let's be sure. Yeah, it's probably the chat and below. Let's start it from here. I think not to make any fuss.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So I work in DG Grow, the DG for Internal Market and Industry and etc. It's got a long name, but DG Grow is the short name in the construction unit there. And I'm responsible for in DG Grow for everything that is that you might call sustainable. So circular economy and also energy matters, at least from the DG Grow perspective. So I follow the energy files as well. Maybe we can go to the first slide. So just some figures. I mean, the industrial strategy of the EU defined 14 industrial ecosystems, and there's a very precise definition of the construction industry ecosystem, which you can find in the annual single market report, which is in the link there. It represents almost 10% of EU value added, 25 million jobs almost, and 5 million companies, We know that they're almost all SMEs, and but also this very large environmental impact of construction. More than a third of waste generated, around half of resources extracted in the EU are for construction. And as we know, the greenhouse gas emissions, we've got the figure there of 36% of operational greenhouse gas emissions. For the embodied emissions, we don't actually have an accurate figure at EU level. We're working on that. There are some estimates out there. But the embodied emissions, of course, are important as well. Next slide, please. So what we're doing right now, this is very current now, is we're working on co-creating a transition pathway for construction. And it has 3 strands to it: the green, digital, and resilient. And we had a meeting on the 20th of September where we worked with the member states and also the industry and other stakeholders. And I think that the Architects Council of Europe are represented there as well, where we kicked off this process of the transition pathway. We had some more in-depth meetings last week, and what we're really working on now is a document that will hopefully come out by the end of the year, where we'll basically set out the status quo of construction along these themes, and then we'll carry on next year with the transition pathway work, where we'll really look at setting pledges and targets and so on that industries can sign up to, so that we really move forward. Next slide, please. So we have quite a few ongoing actions on circular economy and construction under the 2 big strategies there, the Circular Economy Action Plan and the Renovation Wave. Some of these actions, especially the ones on waste, they're basically studies ongoing that have in mind a future revision of the Waste Framework Directive. That directive sets a minimum recycling target and reuse target for construction. And there are some provisions there to review some of those targets. And in the Renovation Wave, we also have the roadmap to reduce whole life carbon in buildings. We also have some provisions on green public procurement, which is a very important area where local and regional authorities can be active. And then we also have an initiative called the Big Buyers Initiative, which is on procurement, which is basically bringing together the big procurers, public authorities typically, to get them to collaborate on kind of best practices. And they have a working group on circular economy in construction. Next, please. So we've heard a lot today already about the whole life cycle of greenhouse gas emissions, and it's definitely a major, well, it's gone right up the policy priority level now, let's say. It's being taken very seriously in the Commission. We already had the levels framework, which is the framework across Europe now for measuring environmental performance of buildings across a range of 16 indicators and for reporting on these. So we really encourage architects and also the construction industry more widely to use the levels framework. We have the action on the roadmap for whole life cycle emissions, which is basically getting underway now. There'll be a study starting soon that will start looking at the baseline, getting some new data, and also looking at some scenarios. And then, and this answers some of the questions in the chat really, in the proposal that's been published by the Commission for the revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive. If you look in there in the new, or the articles have been renumbered, what's now Article 6, the exemplary role of public bodies buildings. This is the article where there's an annual target of 3% of buildings to be renovated each year. Currently, it's for central government buildings. And the proposal is to expand that to all public authorities. So if you imagine a typical a member state country, the obligation at the moment is only for the central government buildings, which are really in the capital city, to renovate 3% of the floor space each year. That would be expanded to every public authority across Europe, every town hall, every all the schools, public hospitals, even public social housing, any building that is owned by public authorities, 3% of that would need to be renovated. Now, we know that increasing renovation massively like this can lead to more waste and more resource extraction. And so that's why in that article now, there's also a clause to make it an exception to allow demolitions and rebuilding instead of renovation. Currently in the directive, that is a possibility, but in the proposed revision, public authorities would have to carry out a life cycle analysis of the whole life carbon to prove that the demolition and reconstruction would be more beneficial than the renovation. So I think that answers some of the questions that we've heard. And then there's the other article on public procurement, also featuring whole life carbon, where member states would have the option of including requirements on whole life carbon in procurement of energy efficient buildings. Next, please. There's also a lot of work going on financing, and this, you may have heard of this EU taxonomy for finance. This is basically work that is to try and define what is sustainable in terms of financial investments. We already have now some definitions that have come out for climate adaptation and mitigation, which involve construction activity. There is a platform on sustainable finance, which is a kind of an expert group, if you like, that is working on these other 4 criteria and has been proposing some suggestions for criteria for investments in, among others, circular economy and construction, as well as things like biodiversity. And we've received back a lot of comments from member states and stakeholders on the proposals that the platform had put forward, and the Commission is going to be analysing those. So we'll see what outcome there is from that. Next, please. We have published some guidance and a recent study on circular economy principles for buildings design. So there was a guidance document last year which came out, which is really aimed at a range of target groups, including designers, which is quite a useful reference document. And then we followed that up this year with a new study that collected case studies of national and regional policies for circular economy and construction. And it put forward some recommendations for policies, including in some of these directives and regulations at EU level that we've heard about. And also some other recommendations for things like standardization and research and so on. Next, please. Another major piece of legislation that is under review, apart from the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, is this one, the Construction Products Regulation. There are 2 major things that we're looking at here. The regulation isn't working as well as it should in terms of the functioning of the single market. So the ability to CE mark a construction product and market it right across the single market, that isn't working very well. So that's being improved from that point of view. But also it doesn't allow very well at the moment sustainability data on construction products to be recorded and to be integrated in this in the declarations of construction products. So we're looking at how to integrate that as well in the regulation, and that would allow construction product data then through the regulation to be used in things like life cycle calculations in a very harmonized way across the single market. Next, please. There's a lot of money available for circular economy in construction. I mean, this is going from big to huge to enormous levels of funding. But if I start with the lowest one, the LIFE program is still a lot of money. The LIFE program supports a climate, environment, and also energy transition projects, kind of direct projects. So among those in the LIFE program are skills projects and things like energy efficiency finance of buildings, but also circularity projects. Then we have the Horizon Europe program, which is the research and innovation program. And there we have a very exciting new public-private partnership called Built for People, which is, and the public-private side of it is that the private side, in other words, outside of the Commission, the stakeholders more widely, and we have some industry associations involved, can put forward suggestions on topics for funding and collaborate with us on those priorities. And this Built for People partnership will develop or work with existing innovation clusters in every member state to work right across the value chain, because we know that it's sometimes difficult, especially when it comes to the whole life cycle, for individual projects focusing on a particular aspect to solve some of the barriers. So it's really looking at the entire value chain at once. And then there's the Next Generation EU Fund, which includes the some of what's been mentioned already, the recovery and resilience plans of the member states to come out of the pandemic in a way which is greener and better for the environment. And they include a lot of funding that has been earmarked for construction, and we've been supporting member states to increase a consideration of circular economy there. I think that was my last slide. If we go to the next one, I think I just have my the yellow one. That's it. That's just our website where you can find out some more information. Just to say, on our website, there's also something called the European Construction Sector Observatory, which has a lot of data and things like national fact sheets and things like that. So you can find out more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Thank you very much. Open floor to both of you and to Alexandru. Who wants to start? Marcos.
Thank you very much. I think it's very interesting to know that which are the projects of the European Commission to reconvert and readapt and modify the directives and the pathways to arrive to a circular construction ecosystem. But I am going to insist on the same. No, we are talking all the time about efficiency, energy efficient buildings, but we have to consider not only energy efficiency in the buildings. We have to consider social inclusion, no one left behind, and also one of the key principles of the new European Bauhaus, the beauty, because we have to readapt our built environment not only for the energy efficiency, but also because we have, as he has said, buildings made from 50 years that our living conditions have changed, and we have to readapt our living, our built environment to our nowadays living conditions. We don't live the same way as we did in 50 years ago. We have teleworking, we have disabled people, or we have dependent peoples on our housing. We have different families which are not the standard family 50 years ago, and we need to incorporate also these two criteria to this pathway.
Okay, thank you very much. Georg, you want to build on that?
Yes. I have 2 points. I have a very concrete point. Philippe mentioned the CE product certification, and we have heard this morning Anna Heringer, who is building with earth and faces a lot of difficulties because it's obviously very difficult to implant such a material in a building, because you need certifications which are cost intensive, case by case even, not generalized. And so it's obviously very difficult to bring into the market a material which has a lot of advantages in ecological respect, like CO2, like transportation, etc., like life cycle, etc., etc. So this is one point, and the second point is about the public procurement. I want to say a few words, because I think, and this is coming with the new European Bauhaus, we cannot treat the purchase of services, of planning services, especially like the purchasing of potatoes. It has to be handled different, but still it's handled in the same directive. And so our request is to have in the public procurement directive, which shall be renewed in the next 2-3 years, we propose to have a separate chapter for intellectual services. What do you say to that?
Okay. Clapping applause in the room. Before you add something, Alexandru, maybe you want to react to these two gentlemen, Philippe.
Yeah, on the construction products issue and the difficulties, that's definitely a big barrier at the moment for applying circularity, you know, reusing products. How do you reuse something from a building where you might have to, you know, it might have been there for many years. Its performance might not be exactly the same as when it was first tested and certified. So you have additional barriers of having to recertify and retest things and the costs associated with that. I think as well as the revision of the construction products regulation, which is going to look at some of these issues, there's also work going on in parallel on standardization by the European Committee on Standards, and they have people working on standards for circularity. So that's also an important aspect of that. The standards need to be, you know, there for people to use. So definitely, you know, that's a barrier at the moment, especially when construction products might be in a safety critical situation, you know, a structure or fire or something like that. That's where it becomes the most difficult, I think. So we really need to advance on that one.
Mm-hmm. And may I bring, there are other questions popping up in the chat. Philippe, if you were so kind to have 5 minutes after our gathering, maybe you could answer directly to the people in the chat, because that opens up many more windows, but it would be very interesting to have your answers. Alexandru, last round with you, your comments.
Yes, so for Philippe, I will have a particular question. We are very glad to see this circular economy principle in construction in general. And he also mentioned that demolition should be an exception and we should try to reuse that. I'm curious if there, with the current documents that you presented and initiatives, if there are specific guidelines on how to approach the heritage buildings. We are in a conference where we talk about heritage, and heritage occasionally has more limitation, constraints, and elements that we need maybe to give for the future generation that occasionally might conflict with technical solutions, circularity principle. So again, are there any guidelines on how we do this?
Heritage. Philippe?
That's a really good point. I know that heritage buildings are, you know, a case of difficulty, and they do need guidelines. In fact, the report I mentioned on circular economy principles, the policy recommendations that came to us, one of the recommendations was on guidelines for public authorities at local and regional level on what they can do, and that is exactly the sort of thing that, you know, could be implemented at local and regional level. Is how that comes through in things like planning regulations. So that's something we're certainly considering, is whether we could take that forward and develop some guidelines in future on that.
Maybe a short comment here, super short. I think the report, which I scanned recently, I think it's very much going on the technical parts of the circular economy. I think it is the moment, and those are not just my voices, but also academia that is saying that it is the point to recognize adaptive reuse as a key component of circularity. The way we transform spaces, building, sites, it's part of an entire cycle of elements which should be recognized here.
Absolutely.
So I must make a full stop here at that, because time is fleeting even more. Thank you very much, Philippe. Maybe you can have a look at the chat. And somebody has been complaining, the president of the University of Strathclyde, built heritage in the title. We are not talking about it at all so far. Therefore, we change to our next speaker, dear speaker, and GRADY. She will now in depth address the topic of heritage within her speech, and then we can address the questions related to heritage later. So thank you very much, Philippe. I'm handing over to Anne.
Thank
Anna
you.
Grady.
Right, and thank you to the Architects Council of Europe. I do have a presentation, a PowerPoint. Have the technical team...
we try it with you, that you do it, right? Yes. the team says, please, would you be so kind to start it?
Okay, we'll see what happens, and there are no grey boxes.
No, it's the chat, and let's see. Looks good so far. No, it still doesn't work. Okay, it's still there. So we started from here.
Okay, right, we tried.
We try.
So thank you, Catalina. Okay, my name is Anne Grady, and I'm a seconded national expert to DG EAC, working on cultural policy. And I'm going to talk about an OMC group. So if I could have my next slide, please. Okay, this slide just gives an indication of all the different programs and projects that have been undertaken. Well, there are examples, there are more, of course. And the first one, Noah's Ark, actually deals with cultural heritage and the impact of climate change. And that dates back to 2004. So it gives an indication that this is not a brand new topic about climate change and its impact on both tangible and intangible cultural heritage. So if I could have my next slide, please. Every 4 years there's a work plan for culture, and this particular work plan for culture 2019 to 22, one of the priorities is sustainability in cultural heritage. And that is one that a priority that I'm working on, and that brings me to my next slide, please, which is an OMC group. And some people, some of the attendees may not know what an OMC is. It's an open method of coordination working group. And it's where the member states appoint an expert to attend the group and to attend a number of meetings over a period of usually 18 to 24 months. They're chaired by an expert from the member state. And also we invite Norway, Switzerland and Iceland to join. And in this particular OMC group, looking at climate change and cultural heritage, we have 25 member states plus the 3 countries as well. And this gives an indication of how important the subject matter has been taken. The mandate, which was agreed under the German presidency, is directly linked to the SDG, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And I just see there in the chat, things are popping up in the chat. Who appoints these experts? It's actually the member states. It's the ministries that appoint the experts. So they have a look around their departments, the ministries, and they see who's the best person to fit the mandate, and then they appoint the experts. And in this particular group, the ministries are allowed to appoint 2 experts, so from different backgrounds, and we're made up of people from academia, from the ministries, from the agencies, the institutions. So there's a good mix and a good variety. In the mandate, there's other, of course, the other SDGs apply, as well as the European Green Deal, the Paris Agreement, the Sendai Framework, and the Council conclusions on risk management, which were agreed last year in May under the Croatian presidency. Somebody's also asked me there in the chat about the slides. They will be shared after the event, and there are links. There is a lot of links in this particular presentation. So the group, what are the objectives of the group? Well, we're identifying and exchanging good practice, innovative measures for the protection of cultural heritage. And as I said earlier, this includes the tangible and intangible. We're looking at the current and emerging threats and impacts of climate change on cultural heritage. And we're also looking at the other side. What cultural heritage has to offer to mitigating and combating climate change in line with the European Green Deal's goals? So what will come out of all of this? Well, it will hopefully lead to awareness raising, capacity building, and also the group will produce a set of recommendations that will contribute towards the discussions and planning of climate change measures at both a European, national, and hopefully a local level. So if I could have my next slide, please. So what have we done so far? We started a meeting in January of this year, and we conducted a questionnaire, a survey of our group members about knowledge about climate change and cultural heritage. And what came back was the knowledge, the data out there really relates to immovable heritage. There's very little on intangible heritage. And even that data, that research is very scant. There's not a lot out there. And also the members are already saying, well, then there's a need, there's a requirement for a common space where information, data, knowledge, and best practices can be shared, that it can continue, that it just doesn't end with this particular group. So my next slide, please. Also, we had from the survey, what are the main threats and impacts of climate change on the built heritage? And the countries came back saying, of course, severe precipitation, floods, that's the biggest threat. And then we have long heat waves, spells and droughts, sea level rise. So there's a whole collection of what are the threats and impacts. So if I could have my next slide, please. We're also looking at best practice, at case studies, and this is very much work in progress, and we're collecting these case studies from the countries. And for the good practice, we're looking at tangible and intangible, and this also includes underwater and cultural landscapes, because that's mentioned in our mandate. We're looking at what geographic and climate zone the best practice relates to. What type is it? Is it research? Is it policy development? Does it concern training? And how is climate change being taken into account? What's the innovative character? CO2 reduction, energy efficiency? Is it public awareness raising? And are there learning models? And then what are the challenges? And who are the main stakeholders? Is there any money, any budget around this? And what are the incentives? So if I could have my next slide, please. So I'm just going to go very quickly through some of the examples we've got from the best practice, and it's at a very top level because we're still gathering this information, and I wanted to give an idea for this particular presentation of what we're receiving. And even the best practice, we can't put them into, they don't snugly fit into a little box because they cross over a number of different areas. Say in Slovenia, which is the example is an extreme climate event. It relates to sleet, and we call it the sleet garden. And from this case study, they're looking at methodology development and the rehabilitation of a garden architectural heritage after, as I say, a very, very heavy sleet shower. They've developed a methodology by scientists and also a scientific study approach. Mitigation, an example here is Austria, an air well system, and it's the evaluation of an air cooling system dating from the 19th century. And it evaluates the effectiveness of the old air well system. What can we learn from it? Evaluates minimum invasive options to optimize reduction of heat in an auditorium. And what are the CO2 savings? My next slide. Research and innovation example in Germany and with the EU, Climate for Culture. And this relates to research and training and assesses the future impact of climate change until 2100 on indoor climate conditions in historic houses. High resolution climate models with building simulation tools. And then training policy and development, Croatia. Dry stone walling, which is important in the Mediterranean and also in Ireland, and particularly in the west of Ireland. And this research project focuses on training and youth. Dry stone structures can play a vital role in preventing landslides, floods, avalanches. But also to the other side, there's the training and the loss of the skill around dry stone walling. My next slide, please. So, sorry, the previous slide. Thank you. So looking at the case studies, and we've broken down into sub-working groups, and we'll have another meeting in December. We've already had 4 meetings this year. And this meeting in December, the sub-working groups are going to start to formulate the structure, the skeleton of the report. So we have renovation, energy efficiency and mitigation, cultural heritage and climate change adaptation, research and innovation, awareness raising, education, training, and policy development. And they will relate and look at the case studies. I've included this slide. It's additional information. The first link there is for a call, the KIC call for proposals about the new European Bauhaus. I've also mentioned there's running at the same time as my OMC, there is another OMC, group of experts, looking at the cultural dimension of sustainable development. I've included the recent council conclusions and also the recently published OMC high quality architecture report. And then, of course, something I think was touched on earlier, the ICMOS principles for EU-funded interventions. And sometimes what we tend to overlook is sustainable cultural tourism. So there's a link to that report, the OMC group. And of course, one of our main stakeholders, Europa Nostra, along with the European Cultural Climate Heritage Network, have produced a green paper. So I think my last slide, yeah, this is my last slide. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you so much. I'm going in punk because Marcos has to leave in a minute. Your very quick comment. You have to take your plane, really.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that this last presentation is very, very interesting because we are very committed, all architects, I think we are very committed that the cultural heritage must be incorporated into all policies related to buildings, zero emission, energy efficiency, and we cannot leave cultural heritage apart. And I think it's very important because nowadays with the recent communication of the Commission about New European Bauhaus, they have set 4 main axes, and one of these 4 axes is the sense of belonging and to reconnect with our belonging to sites, to European citizenship, our culture, our heritage, and this is why I think so important that cultural heritage must be incorporated into Renovation Wave, energy efficiency directives, and so on. But although I am not going to be able to see the answers, I want to put another issue that I consider very important, and we haven't talked this morning yet. It is the public space. We are not, we should not talk only about buildings, our built environment, but also about our public space, because our public space also needs for energy changes, circular economy changes, and be adapted to the way of we live the public space, especially now that we have learned that with the pandemic, we need more comfortable public space. We need to stay on the public space. We need to share our public space between among all. So I think these are 2 topics very important. And I thank you very much.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me this morning. And I'm very sorry I have to leave now.
You absolutely apologize. Thank you for everything you brought on the plate. Thank you. You really rush now. You rush. You are excused. So thank you very much. We stick here for the next 5 minutes because I want to hand over. Now I do it the other way around. I give the microphone to you, Alexandru, and then to you, Georg. Thank you, Marcos.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, for your great presentation and clear guiding on the work of the open method of coordination group. Happy to see some of the very interesting projects mentioned there. One of the questions I have is to what extent, so we talked in the first part about the energy and the industry and construction and how the vast majority of changes that will come with the new requirements. And I'm thinking now specifically for heritage, there are occasionally very specific skills needed, and that means craftsmanship. Craftsmanship, it's an area that creates valuable jobs, but we lose them at an accelerating pace. And I'm wondering, is there an intention to support the continuity of craftsmanship in relation with the new, let's say, transition elements that we need to do with all the regulation construction points?
Okay, thank you very much. And your argument, Georg?
Just taking up the point with the craftsmanship, I think craftsmanship has not the real representation on European level. And this is a weakness. And I would say the European institutions, and this is not a cultural question. This is also a cultural question, of course, but this is more an economic question. They should be, well, they should be triggered, reinforced to get such a representation.
Mm-hmm. And maybe
Fully
we
agree.
can. Okay, you are supporting his argument. I hand over the microphone back to Anne for the last minutes, and then we switch to lunch. Anne.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. And it's a very, very interesting debate, and it's a very interesting point. And it has actually, even though we've only had 4 meetings this year, it has actually come up, and about the loss of skills, the loss of these crafts, and what in the background, what's been happening are 2 different projects which I'd like to highlight very, very briefly. And one is the Blueprint for Skills Sectorial Alliance on Cultural Heritage, and it's called the Charter Project. And this is looking at that skill gap. And then we have the other one, which is more on the cultural and creative industry, the FLIP project, INCREAS, and that's centered on cultural heritage skills. And what I can do afterwards is I can share the links to both for what we have for both those projects. They are still in their early stages, but it is something that is being addressed, and it's something that the Commission is very aware of.
Mm-hmm. I have a last question. Maybe I draw from the chat, because there's the need to. Could you please elaborate quickly on the buildings and the solutions library related to awareness raising? So the question of education, etc. Can you elaborate a bit on that?
Well, what we're looking at on that is we're gathering, as I said, we're still early stages, and we're gathering best practices, and we hope if we can grab a best practice around that, and it's something that we can highlight about the awareness, capacity building. As yet, we don't have many case studies, well, not from all the countries, so we're still plowing our way through.
So could that group coming together help in any way to serve you with best practice data, whatever, anything? Can this group be helpful? We are connected hundreds of people now.
Yes, and that was something I was actually thinking of this morning. If anybody has a best practice because of GDPR, if they can contact me, and I could put them in contact with the different countries' representatives.
Fantastic. Georg, your final words, but before lunch.
I just wanted to thank for the result of the OMC group on high quality architecture and built environment for everyone, which has brought its result last 2 weeks ago in Graz and Maribor. And it's a wonderful work. It's a wonderful document. I invite you all and all the guys who are in the web to have a look to this report.
Mm-hmm. So Anne, thank you very much. Maybe you also want to have a look on the chat. Maybe there are other questions popping up that you might reflect on. I thank you so much for your input. We will kneel on the heritage question definitely also in the afternoon. We will have great, as you're talking about excellent examples. We have examples of great architecture right after the speech of Martin Rauch as the other winner of the European Bauhaus Prize 2021. We start with him at 1:30 in the afternoon. Then we have the excellent architectural examples. And then we have a final round with the new European Bauhaus representatives. And I'm very much looking forward to taking all the dots from the morning into that very last round. And thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all the information. And now have a nice lunch. And we will definitely restart in punct, because now you have 45 minutes for lunch, or almost 50. And we start at 13:30. Yes? Thank you very much.
Thank you.